Fruity.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Dynasty Dudes Hangout with my co-host Russell Clay. And joining us today is Eric Burtz or something or other, another writer for Dynasty League Football, also known as at Dynasty Trades. He has the most famous at on Twitter, actually, if you didn't know. So, how's it going tonight, fellas, or today, or whatever
Hold
time we're
on.
filming this?
I think I can pronounce his name correctly. I was going over it in my head on Twitter, just staring at his handle. It's Eric Burtzlaff.
Yes, you have it.
Nice.
That's impressive. Usually Burtzlaff is where everybody goes. So it's a hell of a last name. You get all sorts of fun insults in middle school when you have a name like that.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, yeah. See, all they could really do to me is like, oh, you're a piece of clay. And then I'd be like, yeah, good one. or the rustling in the leaves one. I got that one quite a bit, too, but...
Wow, that's terrible. Yeah, I would just laugh at him.
You just gotta make them walk that off once they make that joke.
All right, so today we have a challenge for the first time in a little while. One of our buddies, Trevor Maltby, he posted on Twitter like the ingredients to like a smoothie or something, and he said, "Could anyone eat this in one sitting?" And then someone else added us like, "Hey, this is gonna be a Dynasty challenge." And I was like, "Okay." So we've got lemon, apple, banana, orange, and mango. I've never eaten a mango before. I've had mango flavored things, but never eaten a mango. So we'll see how this goes.
Same with me. And I have to say, like, I kind of rushed through picking out these fruits, and at this point in time, I'm starting to regret it. Like, I'd give myself a C- picking out fruits game right now. You know what I'm talking about? Like, there's a few stragglers usually, and I might have picked a. Yeah. So this is my haul here. If you can see. Yeah. So. And the rule, one of the rules is that we kept it uncut. When we start the challenge, that's when we roll, and you can do whatever you want. Bite the peel of the orange like a savage, which I'm sure Nathan does. But yeah, okay. So we're just gonna be doing that. So that's our challenge.
And if you're listening on the podcast, probably just turn this off and watch the Hangout. It's probably more entertaining.
Yeah, I'd agree this week.
Okay. So, as I said, Eric is famous for the at Dynasty Trades Twitter handle. So we're going to be talking lots about Dynasty Trades, Dynasty Trade negotiations, and whatnot. So we're going to start off with, Eric, what are some of your do's and don'ts of trade negotiating in Dynasty leagues?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a good question, and I think a lot of people don't even consider any of the do's and don'ts of when they're doing their trades. They just kind of go into autopilot, and I'm sorry, I'm just watching you guys eat fruit. This is
Dude, okay.
I'm gonna turn my fruit goggles off, and I'm just gonna go. All right. So I would say, as far as the do's and don'ts is, don't give away information for sure. You can unnecessarily give away information when you're doing dynasty trades. Some of the big ones are like, say you don't actually turn down a trade when it's offered to you and you just counter. That's the one where I'll see like, oh well, I think you like that last trade. Now you're coming back to the well for a future second or something like that. That there's all sorts of ways that you can telegraph, kind of in the same way. I wrote like a Dynasty Tells article where basically went through, kind of talked about a couple things you can and can't do when you're doing dynasty trades, because there's a lot of stuff that you can say. Even giving your valuations in an email in the middle of the negotiations is a really bad idea.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So I definitely agree with that. It's very. I mean.
The Matt Harmon was on one time, and I had my face painted like a dog. So just imagine, and now you can. All right. Anyway, but yeah, no, there's definitely stereotypes and tells you can find on certain players. I don't use that in trades as much, probably because I'm just a below average trader to begin with, but definitely in roster construction and sort of when you look at a player's roster, you can sort of get a read for what type of subscriptions they buy and sort of what type of players they like. Is that something you take into account on when you're trading?
Oh,
As well, or?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's when I see some like, and you can and there are several different philosophies as far as trading goes where different sites have different mentalities, and you can almost immediately tell what somebody's trying to do. Even in a startup draft, you're like, wow, that guy's punting year one, or that guy's focusing on strict value on this, and going for best player available, or somebody goes and just is dumping all their first round, second round picks for futures. It's stuff like that that you're like, okay, you have a very good idea. And actually, something that I recommend for most players is to actually keep notes, because it's pretty easy, especially if you're playing with guys from Twitter or, say, a random group. Keeping notes of like what teams guys really like, so you know what they're watching on Sunday, so you can target them with, say, a good example of that is like when Jonas Gray was going crazy against the Colts. I was shopping him to all of my Patriots buddies, like, oh, this is the new guy. This is the new guy. You want him on your team. There's keeping notes like that is something that I don't think is done very much in Dynasty. I think that it is something that should be done. There's actually even a scratch pad on MFL that I'm sure not even most people are even unaware of. So keeping track of who guys follow on Sunday and also who guys value highly. Follow all of your other league mates on Twitter. A lot of times you'll see them tweet stuff out that you're like, whoa, okay, well, and I know I'm guilty of it. I've tweeted stuff out, and then all of a sudden I tweet that I like James White to take over the Shane Vereen role, and boom, I get 1,000 offers for James White in my inbox. I'm like, that was quick. So other guys are paying attention too, but what I would implore people to do when they're considering being in their league in general is don't autopilot it. Is everybody's giving you information all the time. Use it and keep a record of it so you can go back and say, okay, if you end up in a situation where you want a player from a guy, you'll know what kind of fruit to dangle in front of him.
And this is one of the things that is very valuable to evaluating yourself as well. While you're going through and looking at all these other guys, I highly suggest looking at your own roster and seeing what you're biasing yourself towards. An example for me, early on, I was a big Rams fan, and I would always end up with all the Rams. And anybody who plays fantasy football knows that's a terrible thing to have.
Especially Rams, yeah. If it was Green Bay, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna have all of the Jets on my team.
Dude, that's what I would do. And I mean, obviously they were always cheap, but it's like there's definitely tells that you're giving away too. So it definitely goes for both sides of the coin, you know.
Yeah, and actually, I just wrote an article about, and actually, it's an old poker term called balancing your range. What that means is essentially do the same thing consistently, whether you mean it or not, whether you're bluffing or not. When you're making trades, if you decline a trade always when you don't want to accept it, then a player can pick up when you, for example, you don't decline a trade and you counter. They're like, okay, wait a minute, no, he always declines. What the heck's he doing? And that's something that like you're probably not what I would call balancing that, where you're not thinking about any. I guess for 95% of the players you're playing against, they're all going to be just your average guys who aren't thinking at all. But if you've got a couple smart guys and you're dealing with guys who you would consider the sharks of your league, it's really important for you to keep consistent behavior, whether or not you're really valuing a guy or fake valuing a guy.
I agree. And I think trading is one of the hot take. I don't actually like trading that much. But I think in order to stay competitive in competitive leagues, like you literally have to trade. The most active people in leagues are the ones that usually win them. And so like I sort of figured out my own little way with the trading for future first thing, but I think trades in itself are extremely important. In a world where there weren't trades, I would like it. I would rather just draft and see who's the better drafter. But since that is never a world I'm going to live in, I sort of just learned how to kind of, I don't know.
What a boring world that would be. Yeah, I mean, well, and actually, the one thing I will say about the expert, like playing in any expert leagues, is I find that guys have much more hot takes than like your typical league mates, where they have opinions and values of guys that are somewhat outrageous a lot of times, and you're like, okay, well, if you want to overvalue, I don't know, like. And I'm trying to think of who that is. Golden Tate, you overvalue him. That's a completely fictional scenario, by the way. Nobody's overvaluing him right now. But,
literally nobody. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's flying under the radar pretty nicely. But yeah, it's one of those ones where if you overvalue him, then okay, well I'm gonna go in and snag some really valuable piece in my head. So actually, I find that trading in those leagues actually is a bit more interesting and a bit more active, just because guys really stick to their guns and really believe what they're saying.
That's very true.
I mean, I'm in a lot of leagues with Twitter people and guys I talk to often on Twitter and see them tweet a lot. And the one thing I love doing is if a guy runs off with, like 5 tweets about Brian Quick, I immediately go to his inbox and shoot him an offer for Brian Quick.
See, you're that guy. You're that guy.
That
Nathan, if you're that guy,
dude. Yeah, and most of the time they'll respond like, "Hey, you're just doing this because I just tweeted about it." But sometimes it does come out successful because it's just a way of identifying who's high on who.
Yeah, and actually, what I find being the Dynasty Trades handle is sometimes I'll weigh in on stuff. And I mean, like, maybe I half thought about it. Maybe I was like half asleep when I responded, and then all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, I'd do that trade, and then boom, that exact trade shows up in my inbox, and they're like, hey, put your money where your mouth is. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, nope, looked at it a little more. I'm not doing that.
Now, okay, this is one of the other sort of downsides to trading I see. So let's say you're in sort of a less like not everybody's a writer or on Twitter all the time. And like and you just see someone just rampaging through. You know what I mean? Just basically taking all the best players from everybody. Have you ever been in a league where that happened?
Yeah, I'm kind of in one now, and I might be the one rampaging currently. So, but I mean, it certainly happens, and there is to a point there's a detriment to that, where guys who are not. That's how you kill a dynasty league pretty quickly. Is when you completely nuke the other teams and take total advantage of them. It's a balancing act for me, because I'm all about exploiting the edges that are given to me, and that's kind of being an ex-poker player. That's kind of the thrill I get out of the game, is like outsmarting guys and playing on their emotions when I'm thinking more rationally or logically, or like to think I am at least. But yeah, there's certainly it's not something I've seen where it's actually killed the league yet. But there's some that are like, there's some teams in that league that are just terrible now.
And I would never suggest not to do it, because that's how you make a profit and that's how you win. Like I said, that's how you win, by trading, you know.
Yeah, no, and ultimately it's kind of the same. It's a poker rule where if you're not going to take the fish's money, somebody is. So it's one of those ones where, yeah, they're going to make that mistake regardless, so I might as well be on the receiving end of you learning what the value of a future first is, or you learning why AJ Green isn't old, or, you know, whatever it may be that's happening in that particular situation. But yeah, no, it's something that, it's a question like of, I guess, do you veto? And I'm very adamant against vetoes, but if you're going to allow those trades to go through, you almost have to, unless you really want to get into a situation where you're vetoing guys from making dumb amateur mistakes.
Right. And I think that becomes less and less of a problem as you sort of move through, you know, and get to these more people are paying attention, the higher, you know.
Well, I mean, once you get to like year 3 or 4, all of a sudden it's like, okay, everybody's had enough rookie drafts now. Everybody kind of sees how the year plays out, sees what their roster looks like, and they've basically made a decision. Okay, well, this is not the way I wanted to run the team. That guy took AJ Green from me, and now AJ Green is a monster, and I traded for some future asset that didn't pan out.
And that's one of the things I would highly suggest, doing a cheaper random dynasty league as your first few and just play around with everything. That's how I did it, and I got smoked, but I mean, I learned a ton, you know what I mean? So it was fun, so I don't know.
Yeah, I did. My first was a bunch of actual friends. So then all of a sudden I got hooked, and I was like, "Where can I find more people to do this with?" And then boom, Twitter, and then now I'm in 10 leagues. So
that's how it happened.
All right. So any other do's and don'ts that you think we should highlight, Eric, as far as dynasty trading?
No, I mean, I'll leave this segment and just say be cognizant of how you're being viewed when you make trades. And pay attention. Every piece of information you're giving out can be used by somebody else. I don't want to tell you to be slimy, but at the same time, you don't have to be straightforward and tell everybody exactly what you're thinking. There's way too much of that. So go out there, be a little sneaky, be a little bit, feign. You don't have to jump on a deal immediately, I guess is what I'd say. So just go out and focus on just exploiting guys. I'm probably just rambling at that point since I don't have fruit in my mouth.
All right, so sort of a random thing. When you're doing negotiations and when you're talking dynasty trades with different owners in your league, if you have a guy that you play in several leagues, or of him playing in several leagues, and he's very, very good, and you're negotiating with that person, do you ever take into account wow, this guy's really good at dynasty trading? What am I doing wrong if he wants to accept this deal type thing? I'm in a couple leagues with Ryan McDowell, and he has some loaded teams, and I'm like, crap, what am I doing wrong here? I know I'm not going to be winning this trade. Is that something you ever are cognizant of when trading?
Yeah, 100%. And again, I'll always go to my notepad before I make a trade, because there are guys that I view as being very, very good at Dynasty, even better at Dynasty than I am, and I'm cognizant of that. And realistic in the fact that these guys are better at it, probably better and understand it a little better than I am. But it's one of those ones where I don't shy away from it. I do tend to stick to my guns as far as making sure that, as far as sticking to my values and the way I approach things. So there's certainly an aspect to it where I take a step back and go, wait a minute, am I going to just get blasted on Twitter for making this trade? Or am I going to take...
I had one of those last week.
Yeah, and we all have. It's like, I've been in trade negotiations and then finally made a trade. It got 2 weeks of trade negotiations, then all of a sudden one gets snapped off, and I'm like, oh no, what did I just offer? And then it's like, crap, I just gave away the 101. What did I do?
Yeah.
Then put it on Twitter and get blasted. So it's good therapy, though. It's good therapy to take your medicine and realize, all right, that was a mistake. Here's why I made it. This was really dumb. Let's not do it again.
And the other interesting thing, unless it's a really lopsided trade, there's a chance, almost every time, of either side working out, I remember seeing a trade of, Demaryius for Antonio Brown last year at this time, which was a big no-no. Right. And I mean, that ended up being fine, if not Brown being worth more this year. So there's always that range of outcomes. So don't be afraid of trading. Is my
and to be fair, what I would say is everybody makes mistakes. If you're not learning from your mistakes, is the big ticket. So we're all, even I've seen in expert leagues guys make just terrible trades who are. Yeah. And it is. We all have lapses of, we're out at the bar, and then we're like, oh, yeah, let's do this thing. And then, click accept there. And then you wake up in the morning, like, what in the world was I doing? That was crazy. So it's something that just focus on learning from any mistakes you make. And I think focusing on the good players in your league, while we're focusing on that, is seeing how they're making moves, they're constructing their roster, when they're targeting draft picks, when they're targeting veterans. It's something that you need to be aware of and see if you're playing in a league with Ryan McDowell, you should be paying attention to every move he's making because he's a seasoned vet. He's a shark.
Totally agree, and that's pretty much how I learned everything. as I said, my first league was with a guy who played in a bunch of high stakes leagues, and he was pretty not that high. No, I'm not getting into that, but he was like a really good player, and I learned a ton from him just by watching sort of how he made trades, when he used his blind bidding money, and just all that stuff. Yeah, really important.
Yep, stay humble. Don't get an ego. That's the one thing I'll say. Is in poker and in dynasty football, it seems like the male ego comes out in such a way.
Oh,
Do not let your ego take control of you. Stay humble.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so you just referenced the poker dynasty thing. You do have a background in poker. So you want to talk about some of the similarities that you've seen between being a dynasty player and being a poker player?
Certainly. I mean, there's the dynasty. I guess the correlation between the two is mostly psychological. They're two games that are driven by the male ego. There's mostly men who are playing it. Not saying there's not females, but I think even the females would say, yeah, there's like 99% of dudes in my leagues. So it's something that you can take. You can attack somebody's emotional attachment to something, or emotional reactions to something, and really take advantage of it. And the same with poker. Like if a guy really loves a hand or something, or really thinks you're bluffing him, and his ego gets in the way, he'll make some massive mistakes and give you a pile of money. Same thing in Dynasty is guys with their egos really want to put their money where their mouth is in crazy ways. Say you really love a player, like you're all of a sudden, say you're like making a trade like Antonio Brown for Demaryius Thomas. Say you're like, you do value Antonio Brown as much as Demaryius Thomas, but the market value doesn't say so. That's something that, like, if you're putting your money where your mouth is, that's really stupid, I guess. That's what I'd say. So you can take advantage of that and play the market value appropriately, and take advantage of guys who are being driven by their ego.
I think your first few years are learning, and then those ego issues really become an issue, like when you start to come into your own and start to have a good base of knowledge, because then you start to have some pretty hot takes on players. And I'm talking from experience, obviously, but yeah, no, it's definitely, staying humble is really important throughout the entire thing. Like, just because you like a guy doesn't mean he's going to be a stud, you know?
Yeah, and psychologically, it's one that, like, it's the same thing. Take notes, pay attention. We kind of have already harped on a lot of that stuff, but those are the things that I bring from poker that I want, and making sure that, and understanding variance too is one of those things where I know that all of my decisions are not going to pan out, and I don't get tilted whenever they don't work out.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's another thing where when you're going to make bad trades and you're going to miss out, like you're going to trade a stud here or there, and it's going to come back to bite you. At that point in time, you got to just get through it, I guess, when he's putting up 20 points a week for your opposing team. But
yeah. Well, we've all been there. I think every expert will tell you that they have made a trade that they're like, oh God, what was I thinking? Like that worked out just horrible. And you're watching, and the worst part about Dynasty, or I guess, or the best part is you have to watch it happen for like the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, just every Sunday you're like, oh God damn it, why did this guy just going off?
All right, so we'll get a fruit update. I've got half an orange left. I got about half an apple down, and the whole banana. I haven't dipped into the mangoes yet. Where are you at, Russell?
I am 2 apples and 1 banana, and okay, so like, how do you eat a mango here? That's the new thing that we got to figure out now. Do I just bite in? I like tried to cut it, but there's something in there.
Yeah, not a professional fruit eater. I'm actually taking notes on you guys eating fruit right now.
I think there might be a walnut in the middle of this, to be honest.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Or how they call it, a pit. But anyway, whatever.
What the hell? How do you eat this? I should have Googled that before the hangout. So while we veer off,
how to eat a mango.
So Russell, you have some thoughts on Marquise Goodwin and T.J. Graham and A.J. Jenkins. Why don't you get those out of the way, so we don't have to talk about them too long.
Oh, come on, man. Oh, okay, so this is the second year I'm going to be doing sort of the Island of Misfit Toys article, where I write about players from rounds 15 to 20 who I think might have a higher probability to hit than they actually appear to. Um, and basically, my whole strategy has been sort of players drafted in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft and players that are still obviously in the NFL. So like a John Baldwin wouldn't qualify, obviously, because he's not in the NFL anymore. But when you go through the list of players in that range, a few guys that surprised me that are still on NFL teams, Marquise Goodwin, so he was a third rounder for Buffalo, and so wasn't TJ Graham. And I kind of like those types of guys because we still don't really know what they are. Like Marquise Goodwin had 9 targets last year and he caught one of them. And I guarantee that's not his fault, you know what I mean? So it's like, what do we really know about those players and how can we be sure that they're done yet, you know? So that's sort of my hypothesis on these on that range of the draft. I want to get as many of them as possible. And if you have like 30 roster spots, I was going and grabbing in a few of my leagues last night, Marquise Goodwin. So if that intrigues you and you have a free spot, I would do it. And AJ Jenkins, I guess. I mean, I'm not hopeful at all. I wasn't really hopeful for any of the guys last year, but I don't think there's as secured potential for the Cowboys wide receiver situation behind Dez as most people perceive it to be. I think Terrence Williams is sort of just, I don't know. He's all right. Like, he's an all right player, but I don't think if someone takes hold of that position that he's going to be able to hold them off. So I think A.J. Jenkins deserves one more chance on your roster. And obviously you can just cut him if he gets cut in training camp. So that's where I'm at with those 3.
I had no idea that A.J. Jenkins was a Dallas Cowboy.
Yeah, I didn't either until I started looking at all of them yesterday. So, yeah.
All right. So any thoughts on those players, Eric?
I mean, I guess what I'll say, those particular ones, not really. I'm with you. I had no idea. I like what Russell's saying though, where focusing on keeping the end of your roster with high upside is highly important.
Right.
Because going with guys who are just I don't know, handcuffs or even like, I don't know, like just low end, low upside, medium floor guys is kind of pointless in a dynasty situation.
And I mean, last year, like, this actually worked out. I don't think it's going to work out as well this year, but I mean, Kobe Fleener, Mark Ingram, and Brian Quick were all rounds 15 to 20 last year, and they were free. So I think Aaron Dobson is basically the main candidate this year. But since I'm so excited about it, that means it's definitely not going to happen. So,
Justin Hunter.
All right, Eric, let's take this to a dynasty. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So we'll take it to a dynasty trade perspective. With these end of roster guys, and for the most part, your 24, 25th man is normally guys that your favorites from the waiver wire. If someone comes after your 24th or 5th guy as part of like a trade, you know, are you just easy, okay, here, take my 24th guy, or is it some guy that you actually hold as trade value and you'd want something back for that type of player? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess what I'll say is the guys that I'm personally bringing up and that I believe in, the James Whites of my lineup, I guess, are guys that I personally think are very talented, that are going to have an opportunity in the future, and I don't want to dump them for market value, is I guess what I'd say. Is I hold them, inevitably the end of my rosters is I hold those guys higher value than the market in general does. So therefore I would need a little bit extra to, obviously I'll throw them in to get the deal done. You can have a Cole Beasley if you want at the end of whatever trade to upgrade from Demaryius to Antonio Brown, since we keep talking about that. If that's what it takes to get the deal done, perhaps. But yeah, in general, I keep those end of roster guys kind of they're kind of my diamonds in the rough that I value, I think, higher than the rest of the Dynasty community does.
How do you approach trading for studs? Like, say, when you're in the middle of trade negotiations and the guy just sends you an offer and he adds like 2 to 3 guys that aren't really that valuable. Would you pull the trigger if it was like you think like you don't want to lose those guys but you're still getting the stud, or would you counter back and continue to negotiate?
Yeah, I think it depends on your format and depends on kind of the way your rosters are constructed. I mean, is it a deep roster that, or I guess is it a deep starting lineup that having those 4 guys are going to be starters for you producing points, or are those 4 guys, your end of roster type guy or right off the edge of your starting lineup type guys that all of a sudden you target Antonio Brown and it's like, okay, well that's great. The way I kind of approach trading for studs is basically based off of that. I like to package up kind of that lower tier of guys like a T.Y. Hilton. That I've had actually pretty good success with, like packaging T.Y. Hilton with like a Mike Wallace or something to try to get A.J. Green or something like that, where you kind of target that lower tier of wide receivers to throw yourself up. Also, one thing that I do is there's guys who play a lot of favorites with like the top 6 wide receivers. A lot of times I view those guys as kind of being interchangeable. So if I can interchange one of them, say I can trade Demaryius Thomas for Antonio Brown, and I get a future second in there too, then by all means I will do that.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you on that, and that's I mean, obviously nothing ever came of the Dez situation. He's definitely my favorite Dynasty receiver, but in a vacuum, like I wouldn't have a problem trading him for like AJ Green and like a little extra. I mean, I guess that's a hot take, but I don't know.
I'm not sure it's that hot. It's not. I think you could almost.
I don't think it is at all.
I think you could get like a future first, late first, I think, for that in there too. I think people do have a value difference between AJ and Dez based off of last year.
Yeah.
That you probably could get the 110 on top of AJ for your Dez Bryant.
I'm eating the lemon.
Damn, I should have tried that.
For what it's worth.
All right. Well, as you prepare to eat that lemon, we're going to talk a little bit about. So one of your big things from the leagues I've been in with you is your valuing of future first and your trading for future first and how that works. Just give us a quick overview, and then Eric can counter it or agree with what exactly you're saying. Are you prepared to talk?
Yes. Okay. Well, basically what I found, the easiest way to make a profit is by trading for future first, like this. So you're trading for 2016s now, and last year you'd be trading for 2015s. And I think when you don't have the name value attached to an asset, it makes it a lot easier to trade because there's no like selling points. It's just a first. Like we all sort of have an idea of what it is, but there's still no name value to it. And I think you can catch a lot of people trying to like whatever they perceive as going for the win this year, and then like you look at the trades a year later. And I don't think you should trade for one. Like I think if you're going to trade for first, you should trade for, I think 3 to 4 is a good range to have. And another one of my philosophies is I want control of the rookie draft. I want to be able to have fluid movement throughout the rookie draft to get whatever guys I want, and then to be able to trade backload more first for future years. So I guess like my whole strategy is based around that. And then usually in year 3 or 4, I make my move and I go for some studs if I have enough assets built up. So with the first.
So Eric,
the rookie draft.
I guess on my end, and I think that brings up a nice part about dynasty trading is that timing is everything when you're targeting futures. Right now, when everybody's fresh off their rookie draft, is not the time to go after futures. It's going to be at mid-season when a guy thinks he's making a push.
Yes.
That you can get that he's devaluing his first because all he's seeing is dollar signs. So I think that's a very good point. And having a couple first-round picks does allow you the opportunity to shift around in any way you want to basically get. Say you're high on Amari Cooper, you can trade them all for Amari Cooper. Say you're
right.
Say somebody starts falling, you can move anywhere you want in that first round to get a guy whose value might not necessarily who might be falling in that particular draft. So it gives you that flexibility to trade back, trade forward. So there's definitely a lot of value in it, but I don't think now is the time. I think dynasty owners need to set their watches to like now is the time to acquire veteran talent, and then when it's being devalued, and then mid-season when Andre Johnson is blowing up, then is the time to be targeting future first and not the Andre Johnsons of the world.
And what Eric is talking about is it doesn't sound realistic, but it's like so real. It's like right there in front of you every year. It's dead on. So that's something you really want to monitor, and that's another part where you go back to looking at your league mates and who's willing to trade those first and who's not, and who's willing to trade sort of whatever. Like it's all part of figuring out what you want to do, you know?
Yeah, and it's also one other item that I'll add to that is being realistic with what your team is going to do is very, very important in targeting future first. Is say you have Marshawn Lynch, you're knocking on the door, but you don't think you have the ammo to push. Say you're sitting in fourth right now, but you don't think you've got the ammo to push to win the whole thing. You might actually sell an asset like that to a guy who's going for the win at that point. That just pulling the parachute is something that is, and of course somebody rings my doorbell and my dogs go crazy.
my dog was barking earlier too.
Yeah, no, that's great. Completely lost my train of thought, so let me go make sure that I grab the dogs here real quick.
All right.
I was pretty interested to see his thoughts on the playoffs. What do you think about the playoffs, Nathan? Like, do you think you can just get lucky, or do you think you have to have a stud team to win it all?
See, I was thinking about this this week, particularly in Second Chance. For me, if I'm going to want to make a push, if I'm going to go for a championship, I want to consider myself a top 2 seed in the league. I guess you can win championships as the 6th seed, as the 5 seed. It's definitely possible. It's been done before. It'll be done. I want to decrease the chance of offs by having one less week I can lose. So essentially, I want to be a top 2 seed, or I want to try and get to be a top 2 seed, or I just want to blow things up and not make the playoffs at all. Because being a 4th, 5th seed and being knocked out in the 1st or 2nd round, it's just how you get stuck in mediocrity.
Eric, we were talking about like head-to-head playoffs. How do you view them? And do you believe, like, obviously upsets can happen, but I figure you could give your like poker input on like variance and stuff. How do you view the playoffs?
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. Is I think you have to be realistic with the percentage of people get carried away with, well, I'm in the playoffs, I can win it now. It's like, yeah, your team's not that good, and you kind of floated in or beat somebody. You beat somebody in week 12 or 13 to get into the playoffs, and now you're here. That's great, but it's like you're not realistically. You might win 1 or 2 and get small money, but it's unlikely you're going to win. That's kind of what I was just harping on, where like knowing when to pull the parachute and get rid of those toxic off-season assets for future first and for draft picks, so that you can better your team, is something that you have to be realistic with and pull the plug on. Statistically speaking, sure you can go for it, and I'm not saying sell your guys for nickels, but
yeah. No,
but at the same time, it's like, well, if you're a 6th seed, it's probably like a 10% chance you win the thing. So I think you need to just be realistic with that and plan accordingly, I guess. And if you're in the playoffs, then obviously you're not trading at that point unless your league's just Mad Max rules, and then everything's just crazy. And,
yeah,
like,
that's nice.
So
Yeah, so this kind of leads me into a question slash an example. So if you see yourself at this point in the year as like a seventh, eighth seed type thing, are you more apt to try and mortgage the future to get into that top 3 or 4 team, or are you more likely to just blow it up, try and be a bottom three team, get picks and that type of thing? I know it's kind of situation based and it depends on the league and the team, but what is your plan of action when you're stuck in that 7 to 8 range?
yeah, so if I feel like if I can't see a light at the end of the tunnel, if my team is not peaking, then if I don't have a lot of young assets who I think are going to be coming on in the next year or two, then and quite to the contrary, I have the opposite. Say I have Pierre Garçons or something like that, who are on the backside of their trend. Then I do focus on trying to get as much for those assets as I can, but I would wait until in season to do it. I think that too many people make assumptions right now in the season. They're like, oh, my team's definitely middle of the pack right now, and it's not going to be that good. I'm just going to sell them off right now. Well, it's like, well, what's the hurry? You waiting until those guys get productive in season. You can't sell Pierre Garçon for a future second right now. I'll bet when he's catching balls season and it is magically productive again, you can sell him for a second. Maybe you can even sell him for a little bit more. So it's something that having patience is a virtue in Dynasty that a lot of owners don't have. That I think that's where you see a lot of mistakes this time of year. It's like, all right, like for example, everybody read a Charles Sims blurbs coming down Roto World, and everybody went out and got Charles Sims because he's the future. And man, I need a running back, and I mean Charles Sims is it. And it's like, well, there's a strong chance come week 1 that you're watching Doug Martin run out there. So I think it's one of those situations where we're trying not to overreact this time of year, and having patience is super important.
These are great lessons, and I am totally in on teaching you guys this. I can't say I've always followed these, and I've definitely it's tough. It's like tough to be patient in the off season when there's nothing going on.
Well, you're so bored. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
That's why I have the Pro Bowl DVD on my so I can just go back and watch it.
All right, so last thing before we get to the questions, we have a lot of great questions today. So I know people love when we just talk about our dynasty teams, but Russell and I did make a trade this week, and it kind of references this whole 7-8 thing, where I thought I was middle of the pack. I was like, I don't want to be doing this. So I essentially the team was Dez, Gronk, and a bunch of mediocre guys. So essentially I'm trying to deal Dez and Gronk, and I dealt Dez to Russell for Perriman, 2 firsts, and a 17 second. So what I view as like 3.5 first essentially.
Yeah.
What is your take on that trade, if you have any?
Yeah, well, I guess my take on it is one of the things that I really like to do when I'm in a rebuild is to keep my cornerstones in place, and I would view Dez and Gronk as your cornerstones that aren't going away. I personally, I don't try unless I absolutely have to. I don't like to rebuild that way. I like to go in. I like to kind of chip away at the block instead of go for just the gusto at first. Kind of trade off guys, the lower end guys. But I mean, certainly I understand the thought there where you're going for Perriman, who could be a stud in Baltimore. You also are getting a ton of first that you can then run future drafts. But you're basically punting and saying, okay, I'm 4 years away from being relevant.
Yeah, I understand that. But for me, my thinking, when you have just 2 players and the rest of your team is garbage, it's like that's how you just need to somehow find somewhere, and usually it's by selling 1 or 2 of those guys. And while it may not be the best thing for this year, next year, it's definitely not the best thing for this year. But as far as like a market value thing, like it can go either way. But this could be a huge win in 12 months, but it could also be just an average trade where no one's like running away either side.
And now your assets are safe. You know what I mean? Like those assets, like, not that we ever want to talk about injuries, but now those are guaranteed to increase by next year.
Yeah,
so
generic first with no names are tough to get injured. So.
Yeah. I think there are.
Let's get into.
I think there are trades that can work out for both sides. So.
And I completely agree. That's one that I understand.
Definitely. Yeah,
And I understand trading Dez in that scenario. I just wanted to point out that that's kind of my last resort when I'm rebuilding. Is if I feel like I don't have the value anywhere else, which I hope to never get to, but I certainly do have a team I can think of right now that's that way. That I'm going to wait till they start blowing up and sell for a ton of future picks.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so let's get to some of the Twitter questions. We've got some really good ones today. This one is from Big Mac 9812. Do you have a way of calculating ROI on your dynasty trades?
Not really. And it's one of these funny things with dynasty players is we have all this knowledge in our head of like what future firsts are worth which players, which are worth such and such. I mean, honestly, I don't know that there's a way to do a trade calculator or ROI calculator in a vacuum. I guess you could do it, but there's so many. Like right now, John Brown's stock is through the roof because there's tons of blurbs about him. Like there's no program that was going to pick up that John Brown in the first week of June would all of a sudden be very valuable. So I think it's just all about watching the market and making sure you understand the trends and then interpret those trends appropriately.
Agreed.
Okay, and any thoughts on that one, Russell, other than agreeing?
No, like you said, it's such a fluid thing.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Eat your fruit, he says.
Anyways, we're yeah, no, I can't even see him because we're buffering here. So then we'll move on to the next one. This is from Ravage Patrick Sweeney. He says, do you subscribe to playing the FF stock market? This is definitely something I definitely do, and Russell does as well with his trading for future first. Do you like playing the stock market? Like you'll trade for a guy that you think will rise in value, but you don't necessarily like, or vice versa, trading away a guy that might lose value?
100%. I do like doing that to an extent. I do. You have to at some point stop playing the market and go for production because the ultimate goal here is to win. But if there's an asset that say I'm not particularly crazy about, that's going higher than I feel like he should be, like a Jarvis Landry, then I might trade for a Jarvis Landry just to flip that guy for a late first this year, kind of thing.
Interesting.
So if I feel like I'm getting a good deal on a guy, I will buy that deal a lot of times with the full intention of flipping it. But at the same time, I won't do it to the detriment of my production on my team, if that makes sense.
That definitely makes sense. Yeah, I think one of the big things he mentioned was eventually you want to win. You know what I mean? Like eventually you have to put these pieces together to be a contender. So that's just
a ton of fun, but it's a lonely island where you're not going to make your wife's going to yell at you for losing.
Basically, yes. So just think of that, guys. That's basically
But I think
right, so the next question.
Timing is everything.
It is.
Yeah, timing's always key, especially with playing the stock market in real life or dynasty. This is from John Erickson 101. Dino Startup. You taking Jordy or Cobb? Cobb by a lot for me. You're getting similar production this year and much younger.
Yeah, it's not even close. Cobb's, and I think everybody still forgets how young Cobb is. He's still only 24, so he's got with his build, he's probably got at least 8 more years left in him. So there's the productions. I view it as kind of identical, and one is going to fall off a theoretical cliff in like a year and a half. So one is a depreciating asset, and one is an appreciating asset, is I guess the way I put it.
Yeah, definitely Cobb.
All right, and the next one is from Lions Fan 1225. These are all ats, so just in case you guys were confused why people have weird names. What is Charles Johnson's value in picks, in his potential? Once again, I'll start this one off. I mean, I know that a lot has changed since like 4 months ago, but 4 months ago, I traded Johnson for Jalen Strong in a Devy league. So that's where. So I'd say early mid second ish is like your max value what you can get for him. Is that kind of where you see him as well, Eric?
Yeah, I do right now. I view Charles Johnson as kind of a hold. I think there's a lot of very polarizing views on him right now, but I think he's a hold because he was kind of electrifying last year. So if you wait until he has a game there that kind of reminds everybody that he is a kind of a physical freak, then I think you dump him then, and you might be able to get something out of him. I actually think I sold him for a late first last year, which was pretty impressive. But
Yeah,
I think
whatever.
I think his current value, he's going. It looks like 70 overall in ADP. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you have him, I don't know. If you can get a late first or something for him, that might be the move. But I agree, he's a hold right now. I mean, if he can do anything this year, like even the first half, then he might be there might be a nice sell high window mid-season if he continues on the pace he did last year. But
100%.
Yep. All right. And let's see what else do we have here. We'll end with Carl's question. This is from Breeze. Who is the 7-2 suited of Dynasty, and explain what that means.
All right, so Breeze is asking me essentially what player is terrible but could outflop somebody, meaning what hand has currently no value but might have a ton of value in the future is the way I would interpret that, or has a massive potential to break out. One thing that the way that I'll kind of answer this question, I think that Trent Richardson, I guess, is going to be my answer here, where he is absolutely terrible, but my God, if he gets it together, he's got the pedigree to be an RB1. I don't think he's going to stop being the Hamburglar, but I think it's a very low chance that he stops that. But at the same time, he could, and if he does, you can get him for a future fourth probably right now. So getting him on your team, it's a no lose where you basically get him for free. If he continues to just eat funnel cake, then he's off your roster. If he gets his life together, finally sees the writing on the wall, I think that Oakland job is more open than we think it is, I guess is what I'd say.
yes, totally agree. And I have him on a ton of rosters, just chilling at the end there. I don't have the heart to cut him yet. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's getting close to that point, but he's a guy who's free with when we talk about having upside guys on the end of your roster,
right.
Guys like Trent Richardson are guys who have massive upside.
Yes. That he defines
And-
what that is, yeah.
Yeah. So if you aren't folding quite yet on Richardson, who are you folding that most people are still rostering in their dynasty leagues? If you have an example offhand.
I'll go with. Let's see. I'm like trying to think what would be. I mean, the obvious one would be Justin Blackmon. I don't want anything to do with him, and I think the league's essentially folded on him. But that's one that like he's rostered in every single dynasty league still. So if he was on the waiver wire, I'm not even sure I'd bother picking him up. But that's another guy that maybe we could make the upside argument for. But he's been such a knucklehead throughout that I really have a tough time finding a place to put him on my team. Another guy would be Kristen Michaels. That's one that I really just can't. If it hasn't happened yet, it's never going to happen. I don't think.
Fair enough.
All right. So before we do end the show talking about that jerk Jeff, I'm going to do our promotion read because I forgot to do it last week. Our sponsor is Reality Sports Online, and we're doing an awesome league with DLF on them with them. But here we go. Reality Sports Online is a powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. RSO features revolutionary free agency auction room, which mimics NFL free agency, enabling fantasy owners to compete against each other to negotiate with and sign the NFL's top talent to single or multi-year contracts. An intuitive algorithm acts as the player's agent, automatically valuing offers these same factors used in real life. The total amount, per year average salary, total guarantee, and contract length. In addition to its revolutionary free agency auction software, RSO's League Manager has tons of cool features like in-season signs and cuts, multi-team up to 5 and future draft pick trades, franchise tag, injured reserve, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Test your general manager skills today by participating in a free mock free agency auction room at realitysportsonline.com and use the code DUDES10 to get 10% off league entry fees. Once again, that's DUDES, DUDEZ, 10 to get 10% off league entry fees.
All right, Nathan.
So
final,
we'll do,
hey, final fruit count.
what?
What do you got?
I got all my orange gone. I've been sucking on this lemon for a little bit. I did one apple and a little bit more, so we try and chug this. But let's talk a little bit about Jeff Miller. He's your friend in real life, Eric. Is he good poker?
He's above average at poker, is what I'd say. I would say he's, and I kind of harped on it on Twitter earlier, but I mean he was break even online. Online is much more difficult than live, so I mean he would probably beat your average 1-2 table in Vegas, but I don't see him. I mean if he ever sat down at the table with me, I would be licking my chops, I guess is what I would say.
Oh no. So yeah, you did once go to Vegas and sit at a table with him. How glorious was his mustache?
You might not believe this, but Jeff Miller does not have a mustache.
Wait, what?
I think
he's been lying to us.
I think I knew that.
He is right. He has put Tom Selleck as his avatar for so long that people are astounded to learn that he does not have a mustache.
The things you learn on the Dynasty Dudez.
I feel like I knew that, but like I wasn't gonna not. I don't know. I wasn't like 100% either, so.
Yeah. It's to my knowledge, actually, in knowing him for 6 to 8 years, I've never seen the man with a mustache. So he's it's maybe he can't grow one, and this is all just like him living vicariously through Twitter that like he can finally be a man's man that he always wanted to be. But
he hasn't even sent you a picture of like mid-shaving where he just leaves the mustache and he's shaved everything else.
Yeah, I'm not sure he can even grow facial hair. Come to think of it, I'm like 98% sure he can't. He's a boy stuck in a man's body.
Oh man.
All right. Well, this was fun, Eric. Any closing thoughts for us on dynasty trading and whatever it is that this crazy game we play?
I guess I'll say don't be a jerk. The dynasty being smug with your dynasty trades helps nobody. Don't be a jerk.
That's great advice.
But that's where the fun is, though. But
oh man. Oh yeah. I am sweating.
All right, guys.
Now. Like I just ate so much. I just ate so much fruit, and like it's the weirdest feeling. Like I'm uncomfortable, but I'm not sick at the same time. I'm like refreshed. So
you're getting the fruit sweats.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll catch you next week.
Yeah, ton of fun, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in.
See ya.